the Mormons are so into this, but here I am as a libertarian saying, I'm gay. I don't have a ton of gay friends, but who cares? What business is it of ours? What about just loving your neighbor and letting them do their thing? So I started, my very first disconnect wasn't really spiritual. It was political. And I was like, why does the church care about some of these social issues so much?
Right.
On this episode of Not Gnostic, The X-Files number 6, Abby introduces me to Jarom. Currently living in Japan, we found many things we could relate to. He currently works in sales and PR at a sake company, which I think is pretty damn awesome. He also has a project called Gods and Millennials. Mostly about Christian and Mormon people, it deals with religion, especially Mormonism. Because while we could relate to many things on Japan, he told us at the same time a very interesting journey through faith and reason. So this project, Gods and Millennials, is about collecting stories. He wants to hear your stories about growing up in religion and being religious in the age of the internet, where information is just a click away. He wants to hear your stories and then write his commentary about it. It will start out as a blog, Gods and Millennials, but he is still collecting stories. If you want to share your story, please feel free to send him an email at Ero Jero, that's EROJERO, at gmail.com. The blog currently is not live yet, but we will update you when it is. Also, one more thing before we get this episode started, I wanted to say that the call quality did have some complications. Here and there, it was kind of dropping in and out. Not sure why, since we're all in Japan anyways. But it was still an awesome interview. Anyways, guys, thank you for sticking around this week on this episode of Not Gnostic. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I mean, I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so sweet. So I'm Ty. By the way, this is the first time we've met, actually. So
hi, Ty. Jarom.
Nice to meet you. So Abby here.
Yeah, Jarom, how's it going, man?
Yeah, he's told me a lot. So I'm really interested in how this is going to go and everything like that. So thank you for joining us, by the way, on such quick notice and things like that. So.
Oh no, my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on the show.
No problem.
Yeah, that's great.
So you're in the same place as Abby, right? In Niigata?
That's right. Niigata.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So Abby, if you want to start off, I guess, by asking what you want to ask, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just start the podcast off. Usually, like we start with some of our usual questions. Basically, where are you from? What do you do?
I'm from the U.S. and Colorado. Specifically, right next to Utah. Yes, it's my dad is from Utah. We'll get into the Mormon element in just a second, I'm sure. But,
sure.
This is what has brought us together today. I'm 31, and I do sales and PR for a Japanese sake company.
Okay.
My American friends usually find that the most amusing, that a Mormon went into the alcohol industry, because that doesn't happen very often. But I did get my introduction into Japan through Mormonism when I was a Mormon missionary 12 years ago when I was 19.
Wow. That's really interesting. So how did you get set up with a job in sort of it's marketing, PR, and translation? So how did that all occur for you? Like, I know a lot of people, like Abby and I, we're both still in the ALT sort of gig right now. I'm currently working on transitioning out myself. But so how did that work out for you exactly?
Well, after I did my Mormon mission from 2005 to 2007, I went to university, BYU, Brigham Young University, Hawaii campus. And after I graduated, I got a job at Delta Japan, the airline, American airline, but operating for the Japanese market.
Yep.
I started as a flight attendant, and I worked the flights from Honolulu to Narita for 2 years. Loved it. Had a great time. I really liked my managers. They really liked me. I moved into HR management of flight attendants, especially those who are foreign language and Asian language speaking. And it was around that time when I started to really doubt my faith.
Mm-hmm.
It was during my time at Delta that I never officially left the church. I never signed a letter saying I removed myself from the records of the church. I just stopped going. I stopped believing, stopped going. So how did I get into the sake business? Well, that happened because while I was at Delta, I was working at an event called Japan Week in
Mm-hmm.
Grand Central Station in New York City. And we were talking about and sharing about our Trans-Pacific service from New York City to Narita Airport and teaching guests about it. Once I finished my work, I decided to check out the other events. Now, I had already started to try alcohols. I was very interested in wine. I thought wine was a very fun drink to learn about pairings, go to tastings. It was a new hobby. I had my first drink when I was 24.
Very, that's
so
interesting.
It was a new hobby. Yeah. So while I was at that event, I checked out the other booths, and one of the booths was a Japanese sake company from Niigata. It was called Hakai-san. And I started talking to the guys at the booth. They were very nice. They were very educated.
All right.
And so I got to know them. They taught me a lot about sake. And I thought I was ready for a monumental change. I wanted to just change my life. So I decided I was going to quit my job, move to Japan, and see if I could get into the sake business.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's awesome.
I knew I wanted it to be in Niigata
Nice.
because Niigata sake was the first one that really made an impression on me.
Very cool.
I made some business contacts, talked to a recruiter, set me up with the right people, and it worked. I got out here.
That's great. Yeah, I mean,
Wow, yeah.
You hear it's all about networking, and it really is all about networking, when you want to get out of whatever situation you're currently in. And that's a really interesting story, especially how, like, your first beer or drink was, like, when you were 24, because I was super against drinking before coming to Japan, and then I came to Japan, and now, like, I drink all the time. Like, not like to the point. Not
There's
like,
other reasons too for that. It is,
not like to the point that, like, I'm just, it interferes with my life or anything like that. But it's just funny how that worked out. I was super religious when I first came to Japan, and then over time it started crumbling away, and I started trying new things, and I'm like, you know what? I actually really like beer. So
it's interesting actually. Even I think that all three of us, in some way, Japan's kind of helped us move on, or at least broaden our horizons. One thing you mentioned that was really interesting, Jarom, is that you did a mission, and so I'm wondering kind of like where the gap is between like the mission work you did in Japan to now. Like, how did you get to where you are now? Because being a missionary is a pretty in-depth thing.
It is, yeah.
Yes, it is. To become a missionary, you have to become an ordained elder in the church, which means that you have to go through the Mormon temple and take on certain ordinances and make certain promises, and it is deep. Once you do those things, it is heavy, and it is scary to leave. It's almost threatening to leave because of the level of promises that you've made going through the temple. So, in a way, it's a very smart trap on the part of the church.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give you, we'll give you a lot of responsibility, a lot of, there's just a lot of supposed answers that come with going through the temple and becoming a missionary, you get a high status, you get a calling, you achieve the level of elder. So you feel like you're in the club. I'm in, right? I'm part of it. And the problem, that's a big problem, because once you're in the club, there's a lot of good things that come with that. There's a lot of community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of responsibility in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Stewardship, taking care of people, watching over people, people that have each other's back, and you really feel like you're a part of it, and that's wonderful. But once you're on your mission, especially if you go overseas like I did, you can go two ways. The other way you can go is the missionaries go door to door with the expectation that they have the one thing that can make everybody else's life better. And we really believe that. We have to believe that. If you don't believe it, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So if you think
naturally,
I have the one thing that can make you happier, then you can make it through. Now, I had that belief, but coming to Japan also made me see these are people that don't know anything about Christ. They don't know anything about Mormonism.
Right.
But they're happy in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, they're happier than I am.
Yeah.
I think that's something we all realize, right? Like, wait a minute. I have Christ in my life. Why are you happier than me right now? This doesn't make any sense at all. Like,
yeah.
I feel like I'm getting gypped on life right now. Here you are, you're like partying, doing all these things, and I'm trying to have my holy life over here, and I can't seem to do shit. So it's like, that's funny though. So when was the first time, like, I guess you started thinking that, okay, maybe I don't actually believe in this kind of thing?
Well, it started, it didn't start religious. It started political. As most Mormons, I was raised very, very conservative Republican. I still am somewhat. I'm not ashamed to say that I haven't gone all the way across the spectrum. But I found that, as a conservative, a lot of Christians are conservative. And I found, some of the things that I liked. I liked the small government. I liked the, very hands-off social issues, libertarian style of politics. That really made a lot of sense to me. And I saw things that started in 2008 when the Mormon Church was heavily fighting Prop 8, banning gay marriage in California and spending a lot of money to do it. And
I remember that.
I just remember thinking, the Mormons are so into this, but here I am as a libertarian saying, I'm gay. I don't have a ton of gay friends, but who cares? What business is it of ours? What about just loving your neighbor and letting them do their thing? So I started, my very first disconnect wasn't really spiritual. It was political. And I was like, why does the church care about some of these social issues so much?
Right.
That was the way, that's how it started. And it grew from there. And there was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of experimenting, testing of faith, testing of church leaders. It took years to finally disrobe of all the guilt and be free of that.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time. I don't know, Abby, how long did it take for you, do you think?
Oh, it was a few years of time. There was a long disconnect as I was a church leader, and there was a couple years within the church where I was fading out, but didn't really admit it, still was involved. And then when I finally left, even after that, I sort of kind of medicated myself with other churches or like other communities that maybe would have helped me or, get me back on track to where I needed to be. And then eventually I just stopped going. And that's really when it really helped. And then I came to Japan. So over a period of time, I'd say it was at least, including the time I was there, it was about 3 to 6 years, probably close to 6, really, if I really think about it, of total time that I really just like finally just got out,
Yeah.
So
I think it takes longer depending on how far in it you were. A lot of people, like, you hear a lot of things from people when it seems like the more you learn about the faith, like the more you actually lose the faith, basically. It's a lot of the time. It's not all the time. Some people believe it, all in. They're just all in all the time. There's no sort of like breakage in how they think or something. But it does seem like, if you go to online forums, a lot of people will say, what made me lose the faith was becoming a priest or something like that, I mean, it's kind of like the same thing in Scientology, right? When they finally get up to the tall ladder, they realize it's all crap from this guy who he just wrote into like a book or something. And so for me, it was like, I don't know, I was always sort of liberal. So I think I feel like my first motivations were also political in a way, because Abby and I were in a pretty conservative church, and I was pretty liberal by the church's standards. And so here I'm surrounded by people who think gay marriage is sin or something like that. And I think I'm just like, I don't really care. Like, I mean, like, I have gay friends. I know people who are transgender. I don't think it's really an issue what people do in their private time as well. It's like, why does the church feel the need to get so political about everything?
Right.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I mean, that's just something I think happens a lot.
Yeah. So one thing I'm interested in, in regards to your story, Jarom, is, so you sort of went through this journey where you fell out of your faith, and we've kind of maybe pinpointed where that is. But like, what do you consider yourself now in post faith, or did you lose your faith? Like, where do you stand now? As an individual today?
I would say I'm an atheist and a Mormon apologist.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. There's a lot of, we've learned a lot of, like, as we've done this show, we've learned that there are a lot of interesting combinations you can put together. Like, but go ahead, like, explain what that means exactly.
The journey took a long time. It took years, but I came down to this decision in one single moment, in one day, that completely made the difference for me. And we can get into that a little bit later. However, I was never anti-Mormon. The church gave me a law, formed me, and I think there's a place for religion in society.
Okay.
If you want to talk about where morality comes from, it definitely does not come from God. I don't believe in it, but do I think that there is utility and use for religion in society? I think that you can definitely make a clear case that a case that there is, and I will make that case a little bit later on. But I was never anti-Mormon. I never regretted my time in the church. Many of my friends are Mormon. I still meet with the Mormon missionaries here. Talk, let them send me a message. I let them pray with me. Then they invite me to church, and then I say no. But I am an atheist, 100%. But Mormons are my people. They're my culture. It's where I come from. It's part of my identity, and I defend it when people say that it's any more cultish than all of the other cults, or if people misrepresent it in any way, I tend to fight for it. So I guess I'm an apologist in that way.
Yeah.
But do I believe in that Joseph Smith was a prophet, or in Jesus Christ and God? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, those are really two interesting things.
I've said on the show before that, I kind of think all religions are cults in a way. I even think Christianity is a cult. I think the church we went to is a cult. Abby, I think, has a little bit of disagreements on what a cult
we disagree
is
on
or
that
isn't.
a little bit. Yeah.
I personally think most, if not all, religions on some level are a cult. But that's yeah. I'm not gonna say like what's perhaps more cultish than another religion unless it's like really obvious, like participating in some really cultish behavior or something like that. I do think at some point the lines become blurred between what is a religion and what is a cult. It's like a spectrum sort of thing. But go ahead, Abby. Ask what you wanted to ask.
Jarom mentioned like two very big things there, and so I think there's kind of two directions we can take this, and I think we should take it both ways at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you said really caught my ear when you talked about being a Mormonist and the idea of like religion really being almost necessary for morality, and I want to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing you said actually really, I think, kind of fits the vein of right now. So you talked about, kind of Mormonism, like people do view it as a cult. Even within my own faith community, people would talk, kind of warn against Mormon doctrine being this bad thing and just this terrible thing. And I visited a Mormon temple. I know I've told you this before, but I visited it, and it was a really, cool experience.
I remember you.
And so my question is like, what are some misconceptions that you think people have just about the religion as a whole that maybe are like toxic or like just kind of annoying when you hear them, or anything that you might want to talk about in terms of that?
So kind of a funny story. This goes back to when I was in 4th grade. I was very, very young, and I was going to a private cello lesson, and I told, or perhaps it was my mother told the cello teacher that I was Mormon, and the teacher said to me, someone in 4th grade, very, very young, said, "Oh, so how many wives are you going to have?" That's an appropriate joke. That's an appropriate joke to a college student. It's not an appropriate joke to an elementary school student.
Like you're not even thinking about that. Like, what the hell? like wow, okay. That's so is like the whole wives thing completely overblown then? Is that what you're sort of getting at?
It's overblown, but it's not untrue. So the misconception comes from the fact that right now in Utah there are a lot of polygamists, and they read the Book of Mormon. They are offshoot sects, very small sects of formerly Mormon groups that practice polygamy throughout Utah. That exists a lot. However, the reason why it's true is polygamy is a doctrine of the Mormon Church. It was ruled illegal in the late 1800s, and it is not practiced by Mormons, and the practice of polygamy is denounced by Mormons. And so that's why it's a little bit annoying when everybody makes the joke about polygamy.
Wives,
they do not practice. It's against the policy of the church to practice, but it is doctrine that polygamy will be rule of law in the afterlife. There will be more women than men in heaven, and for women to achieve the highest rank of the celestial kingdom, they must be married, and therefore polygamy will exist, according to Mormon doctrine.
That's heavy stuff, man.
It's interesting how it's always the women who get shafted in these sort of scenarios. It seems.
Yep.
It's true though. It's true.
Like they do. I mean, it's like same thing happens in Christianity. I don't even think Christianity condemns nowadays it would, right? But I don't even think like in the Bible polygamy is specifically condemned. Like if a man has multiple wives, although I guess it does have that scripture about if you lust after another woman, then
but I mean, it gets a little complicated. But so I don't know. I guess so Ty uses interesting terms there because he talks about he's indicating there. I think that Christianity and Mormonism are separate, but Mormons, and for a lot of people within non-denominational faith or Catholics or whatever, they would consider Mormons not Christians, but Mormons themselves consider themselves Christians, right? Am I wrong there?
Well,
that is correct. The official name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the reason why it's not considered a Christian religion is because Christianity, after the death of Christ, there was, Peter led the church, and there has been a continuation of the church since then. It's been a continuation with Catholicism, and then there were Protestants that broke away, but were still based on the root of the Church of Peter after the death of Christ. Everything was traced back there in one straight line of history. Mormonism is not considered Christian because it doesn't fall in that timeline. Mormons believe that there was after the death of the prophets, after Peter and John the Revelator died, then the Dark Ages began, and there was no light or priesthood leadership or authority to run Christ's church on the earth. It had been wiped away, and people had nothing but a book. The book is the Bible, and they would just read that, and they would do their best, and they would try, and the Christian church was good, and the Protestants were good because they were following the instructions, but they didn't have any priesthood authority to actually run God's church. So Mormons believe that to restore the priesthood authority, there had to be a restoration, and that means that Peter, James, and John actually returned to the earth as angels to Joseph Smith, put their hands on his head, and restored priesthood authority to him.
Okay.
And so it is believed that it's a restorative church, but it does still believe in the Bible and the church until the death of the apostles.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I just think that's important to clear up because, I mean, even for people that are maybe listening to this podcast that are still of faith or whatever, I think it's really important for people just to see that, because Christianity is such a wide thing, especially today. There's so many sects, so many doctrines, so many ideas out there, and it really all kind of comes from the same source anyways.
It does, yeah.
So it's like, who cares, man? Like, I mean, I don't know. That was always kind of my thing, even when I was kind of a more hardcore Christian. I was like, yeah, Mormons are like, they are not terrible people. Like, people would rag on them like hard, and I was just like, this is not cool, man. This is so.
You are for man. You are surrounded.
Yeah, that's
you
true. I didn't have a
Mormon
choice. But
friends.
like that, all my
Yeah, we did.
all my friends
yes,
though,
did.
man, like they're all like.
I
they're
think the
all
majority
for
of my Facebook friends are religious still. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't exactly come out to anyone really. So, but no, that's interesting. I mean, I do think that it's like it comes down to the whole like no true Scotsman fallacy. Right, like if you're gonna call one Christian not a true Christian, you may as well call yourself not a true Christian, okay? Because you all follow something that came from the same thing, okay? It doesn't like even within Christianity, like you have people calling each other non-Christians, okay? So it's like, what's the point if you're going to resort to that? If you're going to like hate on someone else, like people who are Mormon or something, just because they believe something a little bit different than you, when you're still probably going to hate on another Christian sect because they don't follow the right way to do something or whatever, So it always goes down to that, I think.
Jarom, what do you believe is the connection, between like religion, Mormonism, or just religion as a general, and like morality? You mentioned that earlier, and I'm really interested in what you believe on that.
Okay. So, what I hope your question is where does morality come from? Because that's kind of where
fine.
That's equally valid. We can go with that.
All right, and that will lead into why I think that there's utility in religion these days. So where morality comes from, I believe, it's a Hegelian dialectic of basically trial and error. Humans have been interacting with other humans for, hundreds of thousands of years, and they've seen what works and what happens when humans interact with each other. They act out of their own self-interest, but they usually find that when they are good to people, they're able to build positive relationships that help everyone. They create communities, and it's been hundreds of thousands of years of trial and error. Now, during those hundreds of thousands of years, there were also a lot of unanswered scientific questions, a lot of mystery, a lot of fear of death, and therefore religion came to be. And it answered a lot of those questions. Do we still need religion for that reason? No, we don't. We've got a lot of scientific answers. We essentially know where we come from, and we essentially know where we are going after we die, which is nowhere. or
at least that's where the evidence. Yeah, that's where the evidence points.
Right.
Well, the more beautiful answer is our organic material will be recycled and give way to new life.
I do prefer that answer. I would just
so do I. So do I.
A little nicer, right? We all want to patent.
Now, what I fear though is in this day and age, I think so many people are dissecting right and wrong and things, and kind of, I say conservative values, but I mean that in more of a traditional sense. Dissecting things that we always just thought everything is up for discussion, I think. What is right, what is wrong, everything is up for discussion. I don't think that that's helpful. I think that if a lot of people want to embrace religion and use it and say, here's our starting point. These are things that God told us are right. And those are, don't hurt people, don't kill people, don't steal from people, if you're married, don't sleep with somebody else's wife. Rather than dissecting whether or not everything is right and wrong and go back to square one and start the whole trial and error thing over again, I'm totally comfortable with somebody who wants to say, this is a country that's, if you're American, this is a country that's founded on Christian principles. Well, I'm not Christian, and I'm not even sure how true that statement is. But if you're referring to the Christian principles of don't steal, don't kill, don't hurt other people, and don't have sex with somebody else's wife, well, okay, I'm fine with that. I think it gives a good baseline to society, and religion doesn't always act out well, but it has very good intentions and it has very good principles. So if people want to use those good principles as a baseline for their society, I think that's better than starting back at square one.
So you would basically argue that, like, the basic principles of our morality, if we're just, going to pinpoint it on these ideals, those things strictly come from religion. They didn't have an alternate source.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. They come from trial and error. They come from evolution. They come from human interaction. And then somewhere down the line, people stuck the label of religion onto them. And so now they are considered Christian values or religious values, or Buddhist values, or whatever you want. They weren't. They were originally evolution and human interaction and trial and error. The building blocks of society, and they just got the label of religion stuck on them, and now we have to deal with that. I guess I'm fine with it.
That's interesting.
I think religion, honestly, like, you could probably describe it from a scientific standpoint even. I do think, I also agree that at one point religion had its place at the top as something that helped our survival, in a sense, helped us deal with, sort of conflicting theories about death, where what happened, like, you know, when we didn't have any scientific explanation for why people suddenly just dropped dead for no reason whatsoever, like where they went. You know, it would be much easier to deal with that level of stress way back when, if it was more like, oh, they just went somewhere else, a better place or something. And so I can easily see religion coming out of that. And I mean, I'm not an expert on it, so don't quote me exactly, anyone listening to this. But I think, you know, I do agree with that. Although when it comes to, you know, back you mentioned like how people constantly say America was like founded on Christian principles. Actually, I think the majority of our founding fathers were secular. So at least that's what I see a lot of people say, and I tend to agree with that a lot, is that, you know, they were pretty secular about everything. I don't know why America seems to have so much more religiosity than countries like Europe, where it basically came from.
Well, there's kind of a narrative in history, you know, like, especially history told by the church, that, you know, all the founding fathers of the United States were just God born again Christians, you know, that were just...
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. Like,
you know, that there is a narrative within the church that tells history that way. So I think that's where that comes from.
Well, yeah, there's a narrative that in the church that tells history every single way, I think. But
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But no, that's, yeah, I mean, I just think that I do agree that I think religion had its place. It, from a scientific perspective, I could see how it would like help humanity survive, basically. Nowadays, I feel like it more tries to infringe upon people's rights than it should. And if it didn't try to do that, I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it as I do right now. You know, like, no one gets mad at Buddhists in America anyways, because they don't do anything. I don't know what their impact in Japan is exactly, but I don't see Buddhists going around trying to like change law here either. So, I mean, it's...
Oh, they do.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do.
They're quite political, actually.
I'm sure. How are they political?
But only the very strict ones, though. There are sects of Buddhism here in Japan that are very strict and very political. However, most Japanese people say they are Buddhist, but are not. And that's what I love about Japan. Probably 90% of the majority religion in Japan is Buddhism. And probably 90% of those Buddhists are actually not. They celebrate Christmas with the Christians. They go to the Shinto shrines on certain holidays, but they claim Buddhism. And only about 10% of those who claim Buddhism are actually practicing. But those that are practicing can be quite political, and it's quite corrupt.
Yeah,
you know, that's
interesting.
That's really interesting. You see the same thing back in America. A lot of people say they're Christian, you know, but then they only celebrate Christmas, or like they only put up the Christmas tree, you know. They think that belief in God means they're Christian, when all it means is you believe in God. Like, unless you read the Bible, you practice, you pray, you go to church, I don't know if I would call you a Christian. And I'm not saying that to like say like the whole no true Scotsman thing. I'm just saying that like you kind of got to practice it to be a part of it. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting seeing the parallels there.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, there's always going to be hypocrisy, right? But so, you know, we've kind of talked about some big ideas here, and I'm just really curious about like really where this, you know, kind of to a certain point, like, so we talk about kind of maybe the difference between like, so if we're going to base this idea that a lot of morality has come from an established line of religion, which to that point, I think there's some serious credibility to that. Then, you know, there's the disconnect between like people that actually practice it and how we kind of arrive to maybe our atheism or our self-realized ideas that are different from what our religion teaches about how the world was formed. So that's a big gap. I mean, we did talk about even death earlier and dealing with that. So what would you say, Jarom, because you've come to faith, and me and Ty have talked about this a lot, but what would you say to people that have deconverted from faith? Like, what's a really important thing for them to do moving forward?
Let's see. I think asking questions is the biggest thing that has helped me coming out of my faith. Because when you leave faith, you are leaving a big hole. There are a lot of religion answers a lot of questions of the heart. In religion we talk about questions of the heart, and we've addressed a couple of those here. And so you find that a lot of atheists who have come from a religion get way into learning about science. They're way big on science, and they don't deconvert because they learned about science. They learn about science because they deconverted. They are asking questions to fill the holes that those holes are the questions of the heart. So ask a lot of questions, learn a lot of things, but don't. A lot of people, a lot of Mormons get angry because Mormonism is very controlling. A lot of Christians who've been in deep danger. But I honestly believe you weren't deceived by any one person. I think that everybody that wanted you to be religious, everybody who wanted you to be in the religion, came from a position of love. That is completely my experience. My family is still religious. They are all still very Mormon. I don't feel any anger towards the church. I don't feel any anger towards them. They wanted my happiness and our happiness. I don't believe it anymore, but I'm not angry. I'm sad I'm sad for two people. I'm sad for them because they don't know what I know, and I don't think I can ever explain it. I'm also sad for me because I think that I would have quite liked the Mormon life. I think I would have liked getting married young, having the kids, coming up in the church, maybe leading my own congregation someday. I loved the culture. I think I would have quite liked it. But through my journey, I found out that it wasn't true, and it's too damn bad because it sure would have been nice if it was. It sure would have been nice.
Actually, there's a lot of truth to that, man.
And we've talked about this before too. Like, I mean, I've talked about, Abby has told me how he doesn't exactly like he has different opinions about the pastor who was our pastor than I do. I kind of look at the pastor, and I don't. When I see him like do his like weekly things, I don't necessarily feel any hatred towards it at all. I just sort of see someone who is just trying to do what they think is right, essentially, and I can relate to the whole, they're just doing it from a position of from a position of love and things like that. Like, they truly believe that that's what's right. And so, that's really, I think I can agree with that. I don't know, Abby, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. Well, what Jarom said really strikes me. It's like too damn bad that it can't be true, because there is a lot of truth to that. For me, I think the thing that always kept me there was the faith, was the community. I mean, the reason why it took me 2 years to really even kind of leave is because this was my world. This is my people. I would lead worship, and we would do stuff together. We would hang out on the weekend and spend so much together. And when I decided to finally leave, inevitably I would lose that, And there is kind of something beautiful about that life, of whatever your religion gives you, of just kind of following it to the letter and doing what it teaches you. It is nice, actually, I mean, hell yeah. Have that, that life, it's super unique, and you feel fulfilled spiritually. And, I think that's something that, to be honest, I think the biggest thing that gets neglected, and we've talked about this a lot, but I'll say it again and again. I think the biggest thing that gets neglected after you leave faith is your spiritual well-being. You don't tend to it in the way that you used to. And I think that there's still a spiritual side of life that really needs to be thought of and cared for. And so that would be my thing.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of...
I think that there is it's too bad it's not true.
I feel like after deconversion, or even people who are never religious but have always been the hardcore science type people, I feel like there's a lot of ill hatred towards spirituality, because it's not... Spirituality doesn't mean you believe in fairy folk or, you think that chanting some sort of magic spell is going to suddenly make you rich, right? That's
right.
Like, I mean, some people think that, but I mean, spirituality really just means, in my opinion, anyways, like improving yourself, essentially. Maybe, in some sort of ways, helping your mind and physical body, essentially, like that. And so I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about spirituality in general as well, especially after deconversion, because in many cases you have so much hatred for where you came from after deconversion. And so you don't want to, because you feel like you've wasted your time, you feel like you've, believed in something so intensely only to find out that it's not real. And then, so you have a lot of hatred for that. So you want to constantly try and stray away from spirituality. But I agree. I think spirituality is very important to, your well-being in general, just in general. I mean, and we've talked about this before too, but I think spirituality is very important.
Well,
but
Ty,
I don't know.
You mentioned hatred, and I think that's an important thing. And I think Jarom kind of has had his own path where he really respects maybe his past and values it. Maybe regret or I wasted time, Jerome. Like, what would you say to them to kind of maybe lighten that load, if to maybe appreciate where they've come from?
It depends on where the anger comes from, and what I think the place that I think the anger usually comes from is a place where you feel deceived or taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Someone is executing power over a group of people or lying to them for money. And that would make me angry. That does piss me off. The problem is, I don't think that there is intent. I think that there are a lot of well-intentioned, I think most people who are in the church are well-intentioned, and even if they are doing disgusting things like the megachurch pastor in Texas this week that wasn't opening up his megachurch.
Yeah. I heard about that. Yeah.
So I think that even disgusting church leaders, they are justified in their own minds, and they feel like they're doing God's work. And I think that is 99% of them. And so I'm not angry. I'm sad. I'm sad.
That's a good reaction.
I'm sad that they don't know, and that they're causing more people to not know, but I don't know who to be mad at, because nobody hurt me intentionally.
Yeah. I can see that too, because, again, going back to the pastor, I don't feel hatred towards him. I mean, there's no, if someone intends to do something to you, I can understand being hateful towards that. But after being on both sides of the fences or coin or whatever metaphor you want to use, I realize now that, belief is really not a choice. It's something you're often born into, or it's something you come to based on life experiences. Mm-hmm. You can't really change that. It's not like I woke up the next morning and I'm like, hey, I'm atheist now. That's not how it worked. It wasn't like I woke up and was suddenly like, science has all the answers. In fact, I still don't think science has all the answers. But yeah, and although with regards to the whole mega church business, I don't know how I feel about that one.
That's crazy.
I look at Copeland Ministries and I'm just like, you guys have to be full of shit. There's no, I don't know, the whole private jet thing. I don't know. Did you see that, Jerome? The guys trying to justify their.
Well, he's rather famous, Joel Osteen. He's well known, and he's praised by even people outside of the religious community for being amazing. But
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he truly believes that he really needs that private jet because God says he needs a private jet.
Who knows, man? Well, they basically said that supposedly their church was also flooded, but who knows, man? They put pictures up of it, but it's just I don't know. It's complicated. I kind of actually believe the news more on the side of their church did get flooded, but then at the same time I've heard other reports. I don't really know what's true in that. I mean, I came from a church that stole from people, so I know what it's like to be angry about that. But I think that I just think that it's really interesting, Jerome, your perspective on that. And I think that it's, things can get really tender, within communities like that. And especially like for those that have deconverted that still have family within the faith. And I know that family is a big tenet of Mormonism. And some people don't get that lucky to be, to somewhat still communicate with their families. Do you feel like you're able to still communicate with them or like, do they know where you stand on things? And is that cool between you guys? Has that created a problem?
The levels of awkwardness in my family has paid off in such dividends. We are so don't ask, don't tell. They know that I'm not Mormon. They know I'm not going to church, but they also know that I live a continent away, and we don't get to see each other very often. So we have a very, very strict, unspoken don't ask, don't tell policy, where we're safe to talk about politics, sports, and the weather. And that's about it. And we love it. We love it. We have a great relationship because we keep it superficial, just the way I like it. I get to. That's good. I get to love my family. See, I love sports. They love sports. We like the same sports teams. We like fatty food. We can go out and eat cheeseburgers and pizza and watch sporting events and we'll all drink Sprite out of a straw because Mormons don't drink, and I have no problem doing that. We don't talk about it at all, and I love them for that. You have no idea how much that has meant to me, because I was terrified that I was going to lose my family, and they're good about it.
Well,
they're good about it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people end up losing their friends and families over this, when it's like, I can't help what I believe here, I still want to be your friend. I've always had this sort of motto where it's like, okay, I'm going to tell you guys something you probably don't agree with, right? But when it comes to ending our friendship, that's on you. Okay, I'm not going to cut this cord. I'm not going to burn this bridge. If you want to end the friendship, though, just know you're going to be the person to do it. Okay, and you're going to feel like an asshole when you realize how cool of a friend I was when you start deconverting. Okay, so just remember that.
Oh, so this is really weak of me, but I would disagree with you. I think that you're taking a little bit of you're a moral high ground there.
Yeah,
where you're saying I'm not. You're literally taking the ball and putting it in their court. Why did you have to do that? Why did you have to do that? I'm so passive aggressive.
I'm just saying. Well, okay. First off, I live in Japan, so I am tired of all the passive-aggressive crap that happens here. Okay?
I've been here too long, man. I've been here too long. I'm in.
Yeah.
So I to sort of save my sanity here, I need to not be so passive-aggressive every once in a while.
Oh my God.
So, but hey, I feel like I totally am.
You got to draw a line in the sand, don't you? Just draw that line and say, "Hey, it's not my fault." If you're not my friend anymore, but I'm going to say something that you don't like. Now you have to choose if you're my friend or not. Exactly. And if you're not,
and that's
it's on you.
Well, okay, I'm not.
I'm not. I think it's beautiful. Like, I think everybody, regardless of their family, and maybe this is just me, there's things in my family, we're very open people, but I feel like also like there is kind of that superficialness of a family that, it's not always this way or that way. It's not this perfect unit. You realize that as you grow up. And I think there's kind of something beautiful there or even within people of your own faith that you left, there is kind of this beautifulness of just being like, look, there's things we don't talk about, but we also kind of play this game. And I don't want to lose people that I care about, like relationships I care about. Like I had a friend who got married who was still very religious in the church. And I actually kind of saved face, went back to that church, went to his wedding. And I wasn't going to miss that wedding. Like, that's stupid. Why would I put my own kind of against a friend? Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like, it was kind of awkward, but it was still like important. I think that family, if people can have the relationships with their family after their faith, and I hope they can, and I hope the families can understand that, kind of following that script of, we like this sports team, it's fine. Like, that's how you connect to your family, and that's beautiful.
It is. I love it.
It is.
Yeah, and I mean,
thanks. Go Broncos.
Yeah, that's right.
Denver or
man.
Boise State?
Nah, he hit Denver. He's talking.
Either one. You guys can have your bluegrass. Your blue.
Hey, man.
You weirdos.
Hey, you do know that the Broncos actually had to ask Boise State University to become Broncos. We had trademarked that shit, man.
Huh.
Like,
yeah, so
but
we're
that's neither here nor there.
Taking the moral high ground like we always do. No,
that's right.
No,
so moral high ground high.
But no, like I will say that I'm totally taking the moral high ground in that scenario. But when I do it, when I tell them I'm going to say something you don't like, I'm not saying like you're a bitch for your beliefs or something like that. No, I'm saying I'm an atheist. Okay, like if you can't accept me, then you can end our friendship. I'm not going to end it because I accept you for your beliefs. But if you can't accept me, then maybe this ain't going to work out anyway. Sure. So if you want to end it, you can end it, like that sort of thing.
Well, I think there's a natural defense to that. I think especially as you deconvert, if you're trying to tell people that are like very gung-ho and they thought you were gung-ho about stuff and the church, and then you tell them, no, I'm not on this team anymore. But I don't know, like, in a way, like, you could see why they would feel betrayed. And so, like, if they don't want to be your friend anymore, like, yeah, it makes sense. Because it's like, for 1 minute you were gung-ho, and then you just, like, told me that you, like, drop kicked Jesus and all his miracles out the window. So, I mean, like,
I wonder what that ball feels like.
Did you just say drop kick Jesus?
Yeah, I did.
That's
I mean,
good.
I would never, I don't know. Like, I that was, even just saying that, I felt a little sacrilege, man. And I haven't gone to church in a long time. But
that was fun. The mental image was worth it. Thank you.
Yeah,
it was worth it. It was totally worth it. But so you have, Jarom, you have a sort of project on the side going on, right? With regards to,
yes,
I guess, deconversion or something like that along those lines?
Yes, along those lines. It's not just deconversion, though. The project is called Gods and Millennials. And I'm gathering it's mostly from Christian and actually mostly from Mormon people, but it's about dealing with religion, especially Mormonism, because Mormonism is a young religion with young roots.
Yeah.
So we know your dirty laundry, Joseph Smith. Be like, it was only a couple of 100 years ago. We've got records. There's a lot more written record about the early origins of Mormonism than there are about mainstream Christianity. So,
yes,
in the age of the internet, there you can see all their dirt, and so I'm going to other people that come from other faiths, but a lot of it is going to be Mormon centered, and it's about growing up religious and millennial. And I want to hear people's faith struggles. And I'm also talking to people who went through the struggle and stayed in the religion. So it's not just about deconversion, but it's about growing up religious, coming up religious in this age of the internet, where all that information and that history is at your fingertips, where we're not, and we've got the science, and we're not relying on religion to fill up those holes that are the questions of the heart. We've got so much information, and we still rely on faith. Some people come out of the church. Some people struggle with it, fight it, and go back to the church. But I want to hear their stories. And so I'm collecting those stories, and then I'm writing my own commentary about it. And it's going to start as a blog. I'm still taking people's stories. So absolutely, if there's anybody who's listening to this and you've got an interesting story or just a personal story, then I will. Can you guys maybe list my email address somewhere?
We absolutely will. In the show notes down below, I'll put your email.
Yeah.
What's the name of your blog, by the way?
So Gods and Millennials will be.
Oh, right. Okay.
Will be the blog, and then I've got a YouTube channel where I sometimes address religion, but I mostly address alcohol. and that's Ero Jero, ERO space JERO. So you can totally check me out there. I mostly do alcohol reviews. In the past, I did a lot more religious stuff and kind of growing up, coming of age stuff. But I kind of grew out of it, to be honest. I was in a place and a time in my life where I needed to talk about it. And I got old, grew up, and I just do a lot more alcohol now.
Another
way of
that's
another
life.
way of, another,
I was just saying.
yeah.
Hey, I mean, I'm drinking right now.
Absolutely follow me there too.
Yeah,
same here.
great. That's
No,
great.
that sounds like a really awesome project, man.
Sounds
I
like
think
a
that
very-
it's really cool, man. I think a lot of millennials are so many, at least in the United States, so many. And I mean, I grew up in Idaho. You grew up in Colorado, Utah, right? There's kind of these connections in that area. I mean, you can't escape religion in that area, and it's just there. And I think so many millennials grow up in that, and then they leave it or they don't. But there is a conversation to be had about it, and I think it's super important, whether you're in it or not. It's just super important, and it's really juxtaposed to where we are today in our world of information, and click away from anything. That's also really important. I think sounds really awesome, dude. It sounds like a really cool project.
Yeah, and I like the name Gods and Millennials. That is just that's a really cool name. I'll definitely post a link to the blog, your email address, and any other projects you got going on in the show notes down below.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I'm still in the stage of collecting stories, and I'm writing my commentary. I've written my foreword, and my story is out there. But the blog won't be interesting until I hear more people's stories. So, please.
Yeah. That's great.
Link my email address, and
we will.
I'm ready. I'm ready for them.
If I don't know if Podbean has this either, but maybe if it's got like a link section, even, or something like that, I'll try to see if I can't put your link on our profile somewhere or something like that.
Thank you.
So, no problem. And I mean, if you want, please come on again, because I think we've had a lot of good discussions, and I think, when it comes to the first interview, we talk about general things, but I think there's a lot more specific things we can, as a group, sort of get in on a little bit more and talk about a little bit more on the show as well. So I think that is very interesting. Abby, do you have anything else to say, or Jerome, was there any other sort of commentary you wanted to add here? Or?
I'll go. Abby, I'll give you the last word. My final would just be listen to people. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got a reason. Some of those people, if you are a believer, some of the people that will piss you off are atheists. And if you are an atheist, some of the people that will piss you off are going to be believers. But they all come from somewhere. Listen to each other and just understand that we've all gone through shit that's brought us where we are. Let's be good to each other.
That sounds good.
Man, I don't think I could have said it any better than that, man. Like, that's perfect.
Sounds
this
good.
has been a really fantastic interview. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, just getting to know you personally, and so it's been really nice to have you on. We've been planning on talking about this for a long time, so it's really good, and I think that this is going to be a good addition to our podcast as we search for truth and why millennials are destroying everything. Just kidding.
Why religion destroys everything. Okay.
Anyways, I kind of ruined the end of that podcast, but
you don't. You always ruin it.
It really was a good interview, man. Probably the best. I'm not gonna.
Thank you.
So, thank you for coming on. If you want, even after we finish recording, if you want to stay, chat a little bit, that'd be cool too. If you're busy, that's also fine. But so thank you guys for staying tuned to this week's episode of Not Gnostic. We will see you next week if North Korea doesn't go ballistic. And thank you very much, and have a good one.